in the quiet, desolate town of Gossamer Hollow, tucked neatly between the ancient mountains and the cold sea, young Freddie Bradbury was home alone. His parents were away on a weekend trip and had left him with the responsibility of taking care of their old, creaking house. Freddie, ever the brave and independent 12-year-old, relished the opportunity to prove his maturity. The night was dark and moonless, and the heavy, asphyxiating fog clung to the house like a shroud. The hours crept past midnight, and as Freddie sat in his room, he felt a curious sense of unease. The twisted forms of the shadows cast by the flickering candlelight danced and swayed as if part of a macabre ballet. Then, a sudden brief scratching sound echoed through the darkness, sending shivers down Freddie's spine. It came from the window, a window that, on any other night, would offer a view of the moonlit street beyond, but tonight it displayed nothing but an inky black void. Tentatively, Freddie approached the window, his heart pounding in his chest. He expected to find a tree branch scraping against the glass, a harmless explanation for the unsettling noise, but the ancient oak that stood outside his room was too far away for its limbs to reach the window. Just as he turned away, he heard the scratching again, this time louder and more aggressive than before. It was as if something or someone was desperately trying to claw its way inside. Freddie's stomach churned, and he backed away, praying for the noise to stop. The house suddenly fell silent. The scratching ceased, but the stillness that followed was more terrifying than the noise that preceded it. The air grew colder, and the fog outside began to seep into the room, winding its tendrils around Freddie like an icy embrace. He heard a rustling sound above him, like the scuttling of 1,000 tiny legs. The loft, that dark, foreboding place his parents had always warned him about, seemed to have come alive with movement. Freddie knew that whatever dwelled up there was not meant to be disturbed. Unable to resist the call of his curiosity, he climbed the rickety ladder leading to the loft, every step creaking under his weight. The darkness was suffocating, and he could feel the oppressive presence of something lurking just beyond his vision. His flashlight pierced the gloom, revealing a nightmare landscape of cobwebs and decay. It was then that Freddie saw them. Spiders, hundreds, maybe thousands of them, crawling over every surface, their beady black eyes reflecting the flashlight's beam like tiny mirrors. The legs were unnaturally long and spindly, their bodies bloated and grotesque. Their fangs glistened, dripping with a vile, insatiable hunger, a venomous craving that was bone-chilling and utterly monstrous. Freddie froze, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He was trapped, surrounded by these monstrous arachnids, and their wicked intentions were made clear. It was as if they had been called forth from the darkest corners of the world to torment him. With his hands shaking, Freddie turned to flee, but the spiders had other plans for him. They scuttled towards him, their chittering growing louder as they closed in. He could feel when their legs brushed against his skin, and when their fangs sank into his flesh. The phone rings. Upon hearing the sudden sound, Freddie found himself standing at the bottom of the ladder, drenched in sweat. The spiders were gone, and the loft was silent once more. Desperate for the comfort of a human voice, he raced to the phone, his hands trembling as he picked up the receiver. "Hello?" he stammered, praying for his parents to be on the other end.
"Freddie,"
said a familiar voice, a voice that sent shivers down his spine. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly neighbour who had passed away the year before. Her voice, although warm and soothing, carried a sense of dread.
"You shouldn't be there, Freddie."
The line went dead for a moment, and when the voice returned, it was no longer Mrs. Jenkins. It was a guttural, demonic growl that resonated in the very depths of Freddie's soul.
"You are mine,"
the voice hissed, a palpable malice oozing from every syllable.
"I have claimed you, Freddie. You belong to me."
The line went dead, leaving Freddie paralyzed with fear. His heart raced as he struggled to understand what had just happened. Had he really spoken to a ghost, or was his imagination playing cruel tricks on him? In search of answers, he turned to his phone, hoping to find solace in the digital world. But instead of relief, Freddie found a news headline that clawed at his sanity. "Local boy found dead in Gossamer Hollow home." The accompanying photo was a chilling mirror image of Freddie himself. The article described how Freddie's parents had returned from their trip, only to be met with the lifeless shell of their child, a casualty of an incredibly rare swarm of arachnid invaders. His breath caught in his throat as the chilling realization dawned on him. He was dead, his soul trapped in the clutches of the demonic force that had invaded his home. The spiders, the phone call, the scratching at the window, they were all harbingers of his terrible fate. Freddie sank to the floor, his body racked with sobs. He had sought independence, but in the end, he had found something far more sinister. The shadows that had danced in his room were no longer figments of his imagination. They were echoes of the darkness that now claimed him, a boy forever lost in the cold, unyielding night.